Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second night of our Nurses Immunity Boost Challenge. We have partnered with a wonderful group of guest speakers and presenters to bring you this challenge this week. I'm Dr. Charmaine Blake Woode of Diabetes and Endocrine Wellness Center and the Lighter Way in Huntsville, Alabama. My husband is Dr. Dwayne Woode, also of Diabetes and Endocrine Wellness Center and the Lighter Way. This year, 2020, has been called the Year of the Nurse. We are doing this challenge to honor nurses and their sacrifices. They have been thrown on the front lines during this pandemic of COVID-19. And we want to share some information that we hope will help them as they serve their patients and also empower them to take good care of themselves during this pandemic. If you were here last night, then I'm sure you were touched as I was when Althea Mills, the Chief Nursing Officer of the Stony Brook Southampton Hospital, shared her and her team's experiences during COVID-19. She has done a great job of leading her troops, and we celebrate her. Tonight, we've got more valuable information for you, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But we just want to make sure that we are inviting all the nurses that we know and care about. This program, even though we're celebrating and honoring nurses, it's not just for nurses. It's for everyone. The information is valuable information for all of us, and we can all apply this information, particularly during this pandemic. But before we get started, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to share this video because we want everyone to see it. So go ahead and share the video, tag your friends, tag your family. And of course, when we share, we want to use the 3 hashtags that we mentioned last night. Those 3 hashtags are 1, Team Destiny, 2, Year of the Nurse, and 3, Immunity Boost. Go ahead, take a minute and share this live video. Awesome. Thank you so much. So we talked about some of our amazing giveaways. Last night, we had up for grabs the $50 gift certificate, the spa and wellness gift certificate. We've got a winner, and we'll announce our winner a little bit later in the program. But tonight, our gifts that we're offering, there is another $50 gift certificate. We're also offering a bottle of Immune Boost, and we'll share a little bit more about the Immune Boost later in the program as well. We want you to be engaged with us. Be sure you register. That is how you're going to be eligible to win some of these prizes. We want you to be engaged, so share and comment, and remember to use the hashtags. So we've partnered with a couple of sponsors to bring you this challenge. First, I want to say thank you to Running Nurse, and that is Ruth Pouchet, who helps nurses all over the world who are struggling with burnout. And you can reach Ruth. Her information is on the screen. Go ahead and take a screenshot, so that you can reference that information. Also, share that information with some of the nurses in your life. That information is extremely valuable. Also want to thank Diabetes and Endocrine Wellness Center and the Light Awake for helping to bring us this program. So if you're ready to get started, I want you to put ready in the comments. Let us know you're ready to receive this information. Also, if you are a nurse, let us know you're a nurse. Let us know you're one of those people that we're honoring during this challenge, and put "I am a nurse" in the comments. Go ahead, don't be shy. I am a nurse. Put that in the comments too, along with letting us know that you're ready to get started. So tonight we've got Dr. Ryan Simon, who will share with us information on COVID-19. He will talk about transmission and prevention. Dr. Simon attended medical school at the American University of the Caribbean in St. Martin. He completed a residency in pediatrics and internal medicine at Wright State University in Dayton, Ohio. He then went on to do an infectious disease fellowship at Penn State University Hershey Medical Center. He's currently an assistant professor of infectious diseases for both adults and children at Wright State University. He is married to a fellow physician and they have 2 young children. I know Dr. Simon as a fun-loving individual, one who, whenever you're in his presence, you're sure to have an enjoyable time. I want you all to welcome Dr. Simon and listen attentively to what he's going to share with us this evening. Thank you for being here with us, Ryan.
Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you, Charmaine. Thank you for coming, everyone, and thank you for watching. As was noted in my introduction, I'm going to be talking about COVID transmission and prevention. And I have a few slides. And I think I have about 15 or 16 minutes to get through all this with questions. So we're going to move a little quickly, but I won't be very technical with the exception of one slide that I think is important to help people understand why we do some of the things that we do. That's basically an overview. I don't think we're going to spend much time on this one, but we'll start with transmission and then move on to prevention. And I'll talk both about public health measures as well as individual measures for prevention. So to start, there are a couple ways, or what we call modes of transmission, that you can get COVID. And the most important one is droplet transmission. It's the primary means of COVID spread. And I'll explain what droplet means in just a second. There is some debate, or we think that maybe there is some airborne type of transmission, but it's rare and related to what we call super spreading events, where one person with COVID spreads to many people who are further away than just the standard 6 feet. And then very occasionally you can pick it up from contaminated surfaces. We call that contact transmission. Most commonly, as I said, though, it's droplet with people who are in close contact with infected persons. All right, so COVID transmission, it spreads very easily from person to person relative to other viruses. People who are within 6 feet of each other or have direct contact with the person who is infected with COVID are at the greatest risk. And by direct contact, we usually mean close contact. So when you look at who a person with COVID is likely to infect, it's most often their spouse or partner or household contacts. But when we go out into the community and we don't know we're infected, it can be people that you aren't as intimately acquainted with. The primary mode of transmission, as I said, is droplet. And as you can see from the picture, which I don't know, maybe kind of gross, but it's worth looking at. The droplet transmission, when people cough, sneeze, sing, or talk, or even just breathe, they produce these respiratory droplets that come out of their mouth. And you can see from the picture that some are fairly large and they start to drop off right away. And some of them are smaller. And then there's a haze or a mist that gets out a little further. And for droplet transmission, what we really see is someone who's infecting someone else who's within 6 feet of them. And that's where the 6 foot cutoff. It's 1 to 2 meters or 6 feet at the edge. And it's not to say that if you're 7 feet away, you're completely safe. But as you can see, that there are smaller droplets that go a little further. But we have to draw a line at some point. And so generally speaking, you're less likely to be infected if you're outside the 6 foot radius. And these droplets, they'll remain in the air for a few minutes and then fall out. The heavier droplets sooner, gravity pulls them to the ground. Smaller droplets can actually remain for longer. And we'll talk more about the very small droplets with airborne transmission. Then once these droplets are out in the air, an uninfected person will inhale them, or they'll land on mucous membrane surfaces like the mouth, nasal passages, and eyes. And once you inhale the droplets, that's when they can find the receptor that the virus attacks and cause infection. Airborne transmission, the word airborne in airborne transmission means something very specific to infectious disease doctors and epidemiologists. And it's a rare form of COVID transmission. But when you hear about certain cases, like I think on the West Coast, there was a case where a lot of people were at a choir practice. And so there was a lot of forceful singing and they were together in a group. One person infected lots of people. And with the forceful singing, we think that some of those very small droplets can become concentrated enough to actually cause infection in the air. And small droplets can hang around for hours. Not every infection that travels through the air is airborne, right? So, and that's something that's been very hard to communicate, I think. There are very few infections that are actually truly airborne. We typically think of measles, chicken pox, if it's your initial infection, not shingles, but chicken pox, and tuberculosis. The rest of the viruses that you think of as traveling through the air are usually not what we consider to be airborne transmission. That would be the common cold, influenza, coronavirus. As I said previously, those are typically spread by droplet. However, in certain poorly ventilated indoor areas, or as I mentioned with singing forcefully or breathing heavily, think of churches, gyms, places like that, you may not get the droplets to fall out of the air, and they can remain in there and remain a risk for people to get infected. Other places where we've seen airborne transmission is in aerosolizing medical procedures. And that's basically a medical procedure that's happening that causes droplets to be expelled more forcefully, or puts you in direct close contact or proximity to the nasal or the oral passages. And that would be in the medical field, intubation, where we're in the act of putting a tube down into your lungs to help you breathe. Or if we're not inserting the tube, putting a mask for either high flow oxygen on your face or for BiPAP. And we know both of those types of procedures can cause aerosolizing or airborne transmission. And we actually differentiate in the hospital what sort of personal protective equipment you wear based on whether someone is intubated, whether on high flow, or if they're getting a procedure like an intubation or an endoscopy where they have to put a camera down the esophagus. So just remember, not everything that flies through the air is airborne. There are some other topics. If you get online, you can see on the CDC's site, where you can see news articles about contaminated surfaces. And they would have to be heavily contaminated, or like I said, in a poorly ventilated room. So I think probably the most famous news stories that you would see about this are the cruise ship, where epidemiologists went in and they were able to recover coronavirus from surfaces of inside the cruise ship that had an outbreak for days afterwards. It's not known whether at days that they would be actually infectious at that time, whether they'd even be functional, but we know that we can recover it on surfaces that long. And then the other thing that you might see is pets. So humans are not the only mammals that can get coronavirus. We know that the COVID-19 came originally likely from bats and at least maybe one other animal before it passed to humans. We know that dogs and cats have been, I shouldn't say infected, that we've recovered coronavirus from dogs and cats. I don't think that there are any case reports of people infected by other animals or their pets. The most recent study, or not study, but news article that came out about animal infection was actually the mink farms in Denmark, where they have hundreds or thousands of mink, and some of them got infected with COVID, and they had to cull all of the mink as a safety measure. And before we move on from that, I'll just mention that if the way these new viruses happen is that they get into a new animal and they mix with one of those animals' coronaviruses, or they mutate, and if you catch it back from them, it could be a completely new virus. So as a precaution, they culled all the Danish mink for that. But we don't have case reports or much in the way of transmission from people's pets to humans, so you don't have to worry about that. And it's not going. There we go. Now we're going to talk a bit about some prevention. I'll start with personal risk reduction, because I think that's the easiest and it's been hounded on the most or talked about the most. And then we'll move on to some transmission reduction measures. And I'll try to explain why some of the things that public health does and some of the mandates that they've done are important. So probably the most important thing you can do to prevent getting COVID is distancing yourself and masking up. And the mask serves two purposes. It protects you, but we know that anywhere from 2 out of 10 to 5 out of 10 people who get COVID are not going to have symptoms, or they're not going to have symptoms at first while they're infectious, right? And so if you don't know you're infected, you could still be infecting other people. And we know putting a mask on protects other people from you, right? There's a lot of sort of controversy, I think, in the news about masks, but we knew this prior to COVID. So in my line of work, we work a lot with patients that have cystic fibrosis, and we've been masking them, and we mask when we interact with them because we don't want to give our patients with cystic fibrosis anything, but they're also colonized with sometimes very resistant bacteria, and we don't want them spreading it to other cystic fibrosis patients. So they maintain a distance from other cystic fibrosis patients as best they can. There was even a movie out about that, I think, called 6 Feet. So the 6 feet is not something that's controversial either. And they wear masks whenever they're around. We also know that if you have one of those infections I mentioned that is truly airborne, like measles, tuberculosis, or chickenpox. Now, most people don't get admitted to the hospital for chickenpox, and we rarely see measles anymore, as long as the vaccination rates stay high. But tuberculosis, if you're in the hospital for tuberculosis, we wear special masks to go in and talk to you. And if you have to leave your room for a procedure, we put a mask on you to prevent you from spreading tuberculosis to other people. So we know that masks helps prevent spread of viruses that you might have. So wear the mask. Obviously, hand washing goes without saying. But if you are in contact with someone who has COVID, they wipe their nose and it's on their hand, and you shake their hand, you just got to do a lot of hand washing, because if you touch your eyes or your mouth or something after that, or bite your fingernails, you could be putting COVID in your mucous membranes and getting it. The other big thing that I think is important is being mindful of crowds and social distancing. And this has been the big hurdle, I think, for a lot of us in the United States, where I've encountered most of my contacts or questions, because we help employee health. It's been in lunchrooms or conference rooms where people are eating lunch while they're in the conference meeting and they're sitting around a table. The table is definitely not 6 feet distance. And they're in there for an hour. And that can be enough time to spread COVID, especially if it's a small room. When you're out running errands at the grocery store, or going to, I don't know, pick up something at Lowe's for home improvement and stuff, you really need to be mindful of how crowded the aisle is. Be mindful of not standing too close to the next person in line at checkout, making sure someone doesn't come too close to you, behind you in checkout, and so on. And then the other thing is family and social gatherings. You should really choose safe activities where it's possible to socially distance. A few months ago, I got to go camping with some of my relatives who are not in my personal sort of quarantine bubble. And we were able to go camping outside. We kept our distance around a campfire and cooked our own food and that sort of thing. But we were able to have a good time, and we were able to have that experience with each other. But we made sure we did it safe. And that's the important thing. We're already seeing increases in cases from Thanksgiving. And we're seeing those admissions, which are usually delayed to the hospital, delayed about 2 weeks from Thanksgiving. And we're coming up on Christmas and New Year's. And so that's the big thing. Make sure you're smart and mindful about how crowded the room is, who you're seeing, and really make an effort to just stay in your close bubble. The next most important thing, or this is probably, along with masks, going to become the most important thing, is the COVID vaccine. Now that we've had 2 vaccines approved for emergency use, we're going to be, that option is going to be available. If somebody offers you a vaccine, take it. Take it. I will likely be getting mine next week, and it's a very potent vaccine, meaning it's been very successful in preventing infections in the study groups, and it's been a very safe. There have been very few side effects. As far as the next comment on the slide, you'll probably see or encounter people online who advocate taking things like azithromycin or doxycycline, or certain antivirals like lopinavir, which is an HIV medicine. Oh, I'm getting close to the end of my time, so I better be fast. And none of those in combination with vitamins have been shown to prevent COVID or be a prophylaxis if you've been exposed. Public health measures. This is a very busy slide, so I'm only going to do a little bit of it. But you can see over in the right in the picture that how the virus compares to other viruses and how many people an infected person is likely to infect. And COVID's right around 2.5. Measles is anywhere from 12 to 18, meaning one person will infect 18 people, and that's a truly airborne virus. The previous SARS from the early 2000s was about 3.5. And the reason this is important has everything to do with how many people are potentially infected. And that's what we call the R naught, or the reproduction value. And so if you look at an R naught of 2, which is close to what COVID is, if it starts with one person and goes through 10 cycles, one person infects 2, 2 people infect 4, and so on down to 10, 2,046 people are infected after that. If it's just a little more infectious, say an R naught of 3, where one person infects 3, 3 people infect 9, and so on, 88,000 people will be infected after 10 generations. And I want you to think about that, because that's what matters to public health. How do we reduce that number? And so there are certain things that you can do. Vaccinating is probably the easiest and most important because it's very reliable. And if you can reduce the number of susceptible people who are susceptible to COVID, then you start changing that number from an R of 2 to an R of 1. And closer to 1.5, or you bring it from a 3 to a 2. And if you can do that, go back to the slide, that's just 10 generations. That's a difference of 85,000 people that don't get infected. That's your parents, your neighbors, kids, that's us. And so what we want to do is reduce the number of people that an infected person is going to infect. Masks do that. The social distancing I mentioned does that. And aggressive contact isolation does that. So if you are an infected person and public health calls you and they say, hey, who else have you been around? Because we want to contact them and test them. That's how they get people quarantined and they stop the cycle. And then this is going to be the last thing that I do, I think, before the questions. But the Ohio Department of Health came out with a very clever video that shows how effective social distancing is. And I'll skip that because I didn't get to talk about it. And that, so summary, mask up, wash your hands, be mindful of your contact risk with every activity. And if you're symptomatic or you think you have symptoms, quarantine and call your doctor. Please don't infect other people or just blow it off. If you have a close contact with someone who has COVID, contact your doctor for appropriate testing or isolation. And if you're offered the vaccine, take it. And then the other thing to remember is that this isn't going to be a once-off. There's no law or principle of biology that prevents a new coronavirus or influenza virus from evolving that combines COVID-19's ease of transmission with a more deadly version of something like SARS. So it'll happen again, and we need to get it right, and we need to be prepared. Any questions?
Oh, thank you, Dr. Simon. Very informative presentation. I think it's important for all of us to understand the reasons why we've been asked to do certain things. And you laid those out for us, I think, in a very compelling fashion. So thank you so much. You know, I got several takeaways from this, and I'm wondering what our viewing audience, what were some of their takeaways while we're checking out the questions. I'm wondering what some of their takeaways were. So for me, of course, the reminder to wear my mask, which I try to do so faithfully. It's funny sometimes because it's still new. And, you know, a lot of times I'll get out of the car and I'm halfway to the store and it's like, oh man, I got to go back and put the mask on. But I try to be, you know, very diligent about that. And of course, the social distancing, that's key. You mentioned that even though we're asked to be mindful about how close we are in contact with one another, that there are some safer ways that families and friends can get together. And I'm glad you mentioned the example of the camping activity that you and your family and friends, you know, did. So, you know, even though some of us are feeling a little bit isolated, there are ways, if we just think outside of the box, we can come up with innovative ways where we do not necessarily, despite the social distancing, have to remain isolated. And I think that's important for our mental health. We're sociable, you know, beings, and that's important for us to keep that in mind, that we should do the social distancing, but we can also look at ways where we can come together a few at a time, not in mass, but a few at a time, and do something that gives us some sense of connection. So thank you for bringing that out. The other thing you mentioned was the lunchrooms, where people are, whether it's in a lunchroom or conference room, where they're getting together and, work meeting. And, we do that at our office where, we have team meetings, and we're, conscientious of having people not in that conference room. In fact, we've moved out of the conference room, and everyone's kind of in a corner somewhere, in their own little space where we can still have the meetings and share the information, but we feel that we're doing so in a safe way and we're not putting our team members at risk. So I think that's an important point that many people may not be fully cognizant of, that's something, that's an area where they do need to be careful.
Yeah, and I think as healthcare providers, it's really important to remember that, because you may be in a lunch conference or just eating lunch with the rest of your staff, but like for your office, you have a bunch of diabetics that are coming to your office, and if one person is in there, then you've exposed your entire staff in the lunchroom. And it may not be the diabetic office or the endocrine office. It may be the developmental pediatric office where you have even higher risk patients, or the immunology office or something. So it's really important to be mindful of how close you are and how long you're spending with your masks down. And really, I think meetings at this point should just be grab your lunch and then have a meeting afterwards, at least until there aren't as many ping pong balls flying around at us.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point as well. Okay, so looking to see if we have any questions in the chat. All right. Okay, so someone wants to know, one of the other things you mentioned, and I'll kind of set the context and then I'll ask the question, was the lack of evidence that antibiotics or certain medications or antivirals, you even mentioned supplements, that, and maybe it was the supplements in combination with some of these antibiotics, have not been shown that they prevent you from catching COVID. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, so not all the supplements have been studied by themselves, right? So if you go back through the literature, the pendulum sort of swings on vitamin D one way or the other, and I don't know specifically where that is right now, but there have been a few sort of advocated for or highly publicized regimens of combinations of medicines like zinc plus azithromycin plus hydrochloroquine. And when those have been studied, there doesn't seem to be any difference compared to placebo versus the other. But a problem with a lot of those studies is that they don't isolate out the different components, right? So you don't have an arm with just hydroxychloroquine or just vitamin D. And certainly there have been some studies in the past that suggest a lot of us are vitamin D deficient, or certain groups of us are vitamin D deficient. And so if you have a vitamin D deficiency, then supplements probably can help you. In other types of infections, things like, the airborne that you buy on the counter when you're leaving Target or something, they make claims that haven't been shown to be different than placebo, but even placebos can make you feel better.
Okay.
So mostly the studies that were done looked at prophylaxis after an exposure, or I think there might have even been one or two that looked at prevention, like they just had people on hydroxychloroquine. The vast majority of them have been treatments, though, once you already have it.
Okay.
Right? So there isn't any evidence that it works as a treatment once you have it. Certainly, if you're deficient in a certain vitamin, then you should supplement it.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Right. So you're speaking primarily of some of those medications that have made the news. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Recently, I mean, hydroxychloroquine is like a whack-a-mole that keeps like popping its head
uh,
up.
uh, uh,
But I've seen others recently too. Like ivermectin is an antiparasitic agent, and there's really no
okay.
evidence that that works.
Okay.
Um, and Zithromax, I still see people try to use, and there's no evidence that that works. And then one of the early ones was lopinavir, which is an HIV medicine, a protease inhibitor, because this coronavirus has a protease enzyme in it, but there's no evidence that the lopinavir works with or without supplements.
Okay. 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 All right. Just wanted to clear that up because I'm an advocate for a holistic approach,
Yeah,
where I making sure that my immune system is as strong as it possibly can be. So there are certain things I have, essentially eliminated from my diet. Sugar being a main one, where I'm staying away from sugar because I know that for me, that's toxic to my body. And I
yeah,
can feel a difference when I'm eating things that contain added sugars and when I'm eating more whole foods and when I'm avoiding those refined foods. And
yeah,
I also, want to make sure that, some of the supplements I take, such as vitamin D, some of those things that are known to help boost your immune system. So I just
yeah,
wanted to clarify that. So we
yeah.
do
Especially
have,
in winter. So there's
mhm,
like in darker skinned people in the winter can have
yes,
problems with lower vitamin D. So
yes, definitely. So how long is someone infectious once they contract COVID?
sorry,
That's
I had that slide up there. It depends on how severe their symptoms are. Once you've contracted COVID, if you're mild symptoms where you don't have to go to the hospital, then we consider you to be not infectious 10 days after the onset of your symptoms, provided your fevers have been gone and you're showing improvement. If you are one of those patients that needs a tube or the high flow oxygen or the BiPAP, then we isolate you. We consider you contagious for 20 days from the onset of symptoms.
okay. Okay. All right. Thank you for those responses. So I'm okay. Please talk about some of the known side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine.
So there have been, I think the ones that got the most news are the few people that had an allergic reaction to it, and I think the Pfizer study had 6 people that had an allergic reaction. I want to say that 4 of them were actually in the placebo arm, so I'm not sure what to make of that, but I'd have to go back and look and verify that. For the vast majority of people, it's going to be a similar side effect profile for other vaccines. And most of those side effects are actually signs that your own immune system is starting to recognize the antigen and start to process it and fight it and then make memory antibodies to fight it in the future. So that achiness, the fever you get, that some people get, that's all actually you responding to the antigen appropriately like you should. And the COVID vaccine itself doesn't have any COVID in it. So it has, if you go, remember that you've seen the famous picture of it, it's the circle with the little spikes all over it. And coronavirus is that's actually how it gets its name because it looks like it's wearing a crown of spikes or a corona of spikes. Um, they take the genetic sequence for that spike protein and encapsulate it in a little bit of, just to keep it simple, a little bit of fat and inject it into your muscle. Now, that genetic sequence is mRNA, which is what is made by your body every day when it makes new proteins. So it takes your DNA, which is the genetic code for all the proteins and stuff you have to make, it copies it into a messenger or a transcription and sends it out of the nucleus of the cell through a specialized hole or a transport protein in the cell out of the nucleus into the body of the cell where all the assembly machinery is. And it takes that transcription and assembles the new protein. So you do that on a daily basis, constantly rebuilding stuff, like hemoglobin and all that. That all starts with DNA, it becomes mRNA, it gets out of the nucleus into the machinery, and it makes new hemoglobin. And the vaccine is simply a blueprint. Like if your kids are into Legos, it's the instruction manual for the spike protein. I know your kids are into Lego. Your kid is into Legos. It's the instruction manual for just that spike protein, and they put it into your arm. Your immune system, it goes into one of the cells. That instruction manual can't get back into the nucleus once it's out. Right, so there's no transport of that instruction manual back into the nucleus. So it's going to sit in where the machinery is. Your cell is going to make that spike protein and present it to the outside of the cell, and your own immune system is going to recognize that as not part of you and generate an immune response to COVID. And it's a technology we've been using to try to fight cancer for a while, and this is a new application for it. It's fascinating stuff. It was one of the first times I was giddy reading about it when I saw what they were developing. It's one of the first times I've been giddy in a long time, at least since March. And so once your immune system recognizes it, it says, hey, this is foreign, we're going to build a defense to it. The Lego, the instruction manual self-deletes. It's not even left in you. So it gets chewed up by the machinery in your cell, and it takes those parts and it can use them later for other things even. Okay. So the side effects are mostly you reacting to that tiny little bit of spike protein antigen. Okay. And it seems to be very effective.
Okay. And it seems to me that we call it a side effect, but it's probably
an intended effect.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So the other thing I wanted to mention real quick about your presentation was I love the video at the end where, we see the eggs.
Yeah.
And, if they're close, you throw something disruptive in there, then they all get damaged. But if they're spaced appropriately apart, then they can all be preserved. And if we think of ourselves as each of one of those individual eggs, then I think that illustrated brilliantly the importance of maintaining the safe distance. Now, I do want our audience, our viewing audience, to go ahead and just put some of those takeaways in the chat for me. So I've got mask up, social distance, wash your hands, and get vaccinated when you can. And of course, Dr. Simon shared with us his thoughts about the vaccine and how he felt it was effective and safe, and he's got confidence in the vaccine that he will be taking it probably next week. I know there are lots of reservations about taking the vaccine, but we just hope that the information that was presented helps each of you to make an informed decision about the vaccine. So thank you so much, Dr. Simon.
There's a really good question that I want to answer that I saw pop up from Monica Whitehead. How long are you protected against COVID-19 after having the vaccine? We're not sure yet. And a lot of that depends on how successful we are at eradicating COVID to begin with. So if we get a good buy-in and tons of people get it, and it halts the pandemic, then there may not be a place for COVID to just linger, right? If it's more like influenza, where pockets of people get it and other people don't get it, and it sort of becomes this sort of seasonal passing around, then it could be that we need another one next year. But COVID-19 doesn't mutate like influenza does. And the spike protein probably doesn't change much like influenza does. And it's the fact that influenza easily mutates, which is why you need a new flu shot every year. But if COVID doesn't do that, or if it mutates and the spike protein changes and it can't attach to our receptors anymore, then we may not need a seasonal. Or it may be a powerful enough vaccine that once you get it, you're good. It's just like measles.
Okay. Well, good. Thank you for answering that question. That is an important one because, it's on the minds of millions of Americans. All right. Well, thank you once again.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking me.
For sharing this information with us. Thanks for taking the time to answer some of our questions. And perhaps in the future, as things progress, we'll have to have you back and have another conversation about this.
Well, tell Dwayne my mom says hello.
I will, and give her our regards as well. Okay. All right. Okay. So awesome presentation by Dr. Simon. As I said, it really helped to reinforce and to tell us the reasons why we're asked to do some of the things we're asked to do from a not just a personal protective standpoint, but from a public health standpoint. So we talked about our amazing prizes, and it's time to announce the winner from last night. So last night, our winner of our $50 spa and wellness gift card was Rhonda B. So Rhonda will be reaching out to you to get that gift card to you. So tomorrow night, we'll announce the winners of the $50 gift card from tonight and the Oxygen Immune Boost. And we had a little bit of this conversation with Dr. Simon, where there's no evidence for some of the medications that has been floating around or being advocated to either prevent or treat COVID. And I shared my thoughts about just having a healthy immune system. And as part of that conversation, I want to just mention, in addition to, I mentioned I eliminated a lot of added sugar from my diet. In addition to doing that, I'm also making sure I'm getting sufficient rest. I'm getting at least 7 hours most nights. I can't promise you that I'm able to do it every night, but those are some of the things I'm doing to make sure that my immune system is strong. I do believe that a healthy immune system is essential, particularly at this time where we're facing the pandemic. So one of our gifts is a supplement called Immune Boost. And it's important for us to keep safe just in general, but particularly during the pandemic. And we've got a short video sharing some of the ingredients and the importance of the immune boost. So if we can get that video at this time.
There has never been a more critical time for a product that can help boost your body's resistance to stress, toxins, bacteria, pollutants, poor diet, viruses, and other threats that compromise your body's immune system. A product that can revolutionize the way you build and maintain your body's defenses. Introducing Oxygen Immune Boost, a powerfully potent blend of life-enhancing ingredients that have been combined for the first time to deliver a synergistic explosion of wellness to protect and defend your immune system. We started with the highest quality hemp-derived CBD for its overall health and anti-inflammatory benefits. Then we added zinc, a mineral critical for immune function and recognized for its ability to fight bacteria and viruses. Next, we blended holy basil, also known as Tulsi, the queen of herbs, renowned in Eastern medicine for its anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, and antioxidant advantages. Then Oxygen Immune Boost was infused with S-acetyl-L-glutathione, acclaimed as the mother of all antioxidants, and one of the most significant immune boosting and bioavailable molecules ever discovered. And finally, vitamin D3 was added. Also known as the sunshine vitamin, this ingredient enhances the immune system as well as helps to maintain normal blood pressure levels, supports bone and muscle strength, and assists in the prevention of depression and anxiety. Individually, each of these active ingredients offer crucial health benefits, but combined, they are even more powerful and provide the ultimate defense. Oxygen Immune Boost is poised to change the health and wellness industry like nothing else before. For the first time, you can experience the benefits of all of these essential ingredients in a brilliantly formulated blend, and all in one capsule. Your immune system is your shield against the external forces that threaten your health every day. Be the first to take advantage of this new secret weapon in the fight. Be the first to protect and defend your body with Oxygen Immune Boost.
Awesome, awesome. So if you'd like more information about the Oxygen Immune Boost, go to the teamdestinyevents.com website. That's where you're registered, and click on Boost Your Immunity, where you'll learn more information about that immune boost. So remember, someone's going to win a bottle of that immune boost, and to be entered, to be eligible to win, you do have to register. And of course, engage with us, share the videos, like, comment in the chat. We had another awesome night. Dr. Simon gave a great presentation, and I hope it was helpful to you. Please share this information with all of the nurses in your life that you care about. Share it with your family and your friends. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow night. I do want to thank our sponsors once again. That is the Running Nurse and Diabetes and Endocrine Wellness Center and the Lighter Way. Tomorrow night, we've got Dr. Shahan Stutz, who is an allergist and immunologist. He will be talking about the body's immune response. So your own body's response to COVID-19. He'll speak about that and share some more incredible information with us so that we understand what actually happens in our bodies and why some people get so sick when they contract and are infected with COVID-19. So remember once again to share the information, share this live video, and we'll see you back tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central. You all have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.